Hello, welcome, and thanks for joining us on this edition of News 2. I'm Sandra Gumansing. In a surprising move, Monday, 85-year-old Pope Benedict XVI announced his resignation due to health issues. The news reached Catholics around the world, even Bishop Herbert Bevard here in the Virgin Islands. News 2's Erica Bivens-Smith with the bishop, who spoke candidly about his experiences meeting the Pope.
I think I join everybody in the world in saying that I was very surprised.
Herbert Bevard is the bishop for the St. Thomas Diocese. He says although it's not against the rules for the Pope to resign, it's uncommon.
Because a Pope hasn't abdicated for over 600 years.
On Monday, Pope Benedict XVI announced his resignation effective February 28th, which means there will be a search for a new Pope.
The cardinals of the Church will be called to Rome, and they will meet in what is called a conclave. During that meeting, they will elect a new pope.
Vatican officials say they hope to have a new pope by Easter, and Catholics believe Holy Spirit will inspire the cardinals in their selection. Bishop Bevard also had the opportunity to personally meet Pope Benedict back in 2008.
At that time, the Holy Father was in Castle Dandolfo, where he spends the summer months. And it was, of course, a great thrill to be in his presence and to receive his blessing at the very beginning of my appointment as a bishop.
The two met again last fall when Pope Benedict gave him this cross as a gift.
I have always cherished this since he gave it to me, and I will certainly continue to do so.
Monsignor Jerome Figio says as a priest he's been inspired by the leadership of Pope Benedict.
I have been deeply touched and impressed by what he asks priests or Christians to do.
Catholics around the world will be praying not only for the search for a new pope, but also for Pope Benedict.
I think he just felt that it was beyond his physical strength to continue, and that he would have to leave things undone that should have been done. And so pray for him, that God may give him the graces and the strength that he needs.
For News 2, I'm Erica Bivens.
Governor John DeYoung also extended his appreciation and prayers to Pope Benedict XVI, stating the announcement brings a sense of sadness for Catholics throughout the Diocese of the Virgin Islands, as well as a profound gratitude for all that he has done. Police are investigating a non-fatal shooting that occurred early Monday morning in the JFK Housing Community on St. Croix. According to police reports, a man said that while he was on his way to work, he observed a masked male in all black clothing who approached him and began fighting with him. During the skirmish, the victim was shot and had to be treated at the 1 F. Louis Hospital. Police urge anyone who may know anything about this crime to call 712-6037 or 712-6077. 20-year-old Jermel Evans of Mutual Homes Apartments has been arrested and charged with second-degree burglary. Police said Evans was positively identified as the person who pushed through a bedroom window to gain entry into another Mutual Homes apartment without permission. The incident occurred at 1:30 p.m. on February 6, and Evans was arrested the same day. Meanwhile, police are also investigating another second-degree burglary that occurred the next day, February 7th at 4:30 a.m. in La Grande Princess Manor. The resident told police she was resting in her bed when she heard the sliding glass door open and saw a person dressed in all black come inside. The resident said she called for her husband, and the suspect left the home. Acting Police Commissioner Rodney Carrard, meanwhile, is asking for people who are committing burglaries across the territory to stop, and he's also directing that message to residents who are helping the criminals.
I'd like to send a stern message to those individuals who are involved in burglaries occurring territory-wide. I have directed my chiefs in both districts to ensure if an investigation reveals that a parent, guardian, caretaker, or adult in a household had knowledge or should have knowledge that the items recovered in their home were stolen property, that a prosecutorial opinion be requested from the Attorney General's office in pursuit of arresting and charging the individuals to the fullest extent of the law. This practice of acceptance must stop. The same message goes out to those of you who are buying stolen property.
The VI's Health Reform Task Force have released the findings from a recent report. The study looked at whether or not the territory's healthcare technology systems could support a healthcare exchange. Turns out it can't, but that doesn't mean the exchange is off the table. News2's Erica Parsons has more.
The territory's healthcare systems aren't suited to the task of supporting a health insurance marketplace in accordance with the Affordable Care Act, at least not on their own. That's according to a recent report released from New Wave Technologies. The report's findings list several options to address the shortcomings of the territory's health information systems, but according to that report, only one of those will really work to meet the January 2014 deadline. The first option would mean developing an exchange from scratch. Option 2 means keeping the existing systems while building upon it to fill the deficiencies. Both aren't practical because of the amount of development and resources it would need in a short space of time. But the report says if the VI partners with another state that isn't using the federally mandated model, it could work. Now the VI's Health Reform Task Force has to decide between choosing that option or expanding Medicaid, and which will come out better for the territory. They're just waiting on one more report.
Once we get that private market insurance study, we're going to put together a comprehensive health reform report, and we're going to submit it. We're going to vet it through the task force, clean it up, and then the Lieutenant Governor will submit that to Governor DeYoung for his consideration.
And ultimately, Governor DeYoung has the final say.
The task force hopes to have a final report submitted to Governor DeYoung for consideration in early March. The exchange marketplace planning grant, that grant expires on March 21st of this year. So we want to make sure that we're well within that deadline.
Erica Parsons, News 2.
Residents can go to www.governordeyong.com/health reform to view the entire report. Many residents in the territory have experienced what is described as flu-like symptoms over the past few months, and while some actually have influenza, others may have dengue fever, according to a private physician on St. Croix, who's also concerned about the lack of dengue testing being done. News 2's Janisha John brings us more.
Over the past few months, many residents have been treated for displaying flu-like symptoms. However, what some private physicians are saying is that it's not the flu they're experiencing, but rather the dengue fever instead.
We have been seeing every day at least 5 to 10 cases of flu symptoms, and half of them are like dengue. People keep coming saying they have the flu symptoms, and then when you ask them exactly, describe what you mean by flu, and that's when we can differentiate between either if it's a dengue fever or influenza.
Many are often confused by the flu-like symptoms. However, doctors say the difference between influenza and dengue fever is whether or not respiratory symptoms appear.
Difference is with the influenza, you get similar body aches and headaches and all that, except there's a lot of respiratory symptoms, runny nose, congestion, sore throat, whereas dengue, they do have all the symptoms of flu, which is high fever, body aches, chills, except no respiratory symptoms.
While many physicians can distinguish the two, diagnosing the virus as dengue fever cannot occur without official testing, a process that some say is quite difficult to do without much support from the Department of Health.
We have to do the testing to confirm, but that's a long process, never happens. The health department could have been more aggressive in this. Has to be testing more and providing with providers with what they find and what's going on. So we are kind of left in the dark to just deal with it.
Despite the lack of support, Dr. Prasad said he continues to provide treatments to those with dengue and flu-like symptoms, encouraging residents to avoid getting bitten by mosquitoes and to stay hydrated. Janisha John, News 2.
And News 2 reached out to the Department of Health officials to further discuss the status of influenza and dengue fever in the territory. No calls were returned as of news time. President Obama plans to focus on America's middle class in tonight's State of the Union address. He's also expected to talk about North Korea, Afghanistan, and gun violence. Many victims of gun violence are in Washington to hear that speech. Susan McGinnis has more from Capitol Hill.
President Obama is putting improving the economy front and center in his State of the Union address.
If you really worked hard and everybody gets a fair shot, everybody gets a fair shake, everybody plays by the same set of rules, and that if we do that together, our nation will be stronger.
The president is giving the annual speech before Congress and the American people with unemployment hovering around 8%. Drastic cuts in domestic programs and military spending are also getting ready to sock the economy if the president and Congress can't reach a deal to stop them.
The first thing many of us will be listening for tonight is the president's plan for controlling spending and replacing the Obama sequester.
The president will make room in his speech to address North Korea's nuclear test and plans to announce that 34,000 U.S. troops will be home from Afghanistan by this time next year. President Obama is also expected to speak about new gun laws, with many victims of gun violence in the chamber. Some of those victims stood at a Senate hearing earlier today and will join their lawmakers as guests tonight. But many lawmakers remain opposed to laws banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
In my view, stripping the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens does nothing to prevent criminals from carrying out violent crime.
With Congress so divided, the president will hit the road after his speech to take his agenda directly to the American people.
Now, the speech can be viewed at 10 p.m. right here live on CBS TV 2, and you can also join the Democratic Party on St. Thomas for their viewing party. They will have a big screen set up across the front of the gazebo in Emancipation Garden for President Obama's speech. That's tonight at 9 p.m. And keeping our eye on the economy, Twitter users will soon be able to use tweets to buy things. American Express and Twitter have announced a partnership that will let cardholders make purchases by tweeting special hashtags. Amex will place product promotions in their Twitter feed. When an Amex cardholder sees any item they want, they can tweet back the hashtag and buy it. This is the New York Stock Exchange with Scotiabank Stock Market Watch. The Dow up 47, NASDAQ down 5, S&P up 2. Coming up on News 2, she was known for her passion in education, having served as a teacher and principal until she retired in 1972. She was laid to rest on Monday. More on the life and legacy of Mrs. Evelyn M. Williams. We'll be right back. Well, the manhunt for ex-Los Angeles police officer Christopher Dorner continues. However, some breaking news as of 4 p.m. this afternoon in Big Bear, California. News of gunfire being exchanged came in. Be sure to tune in to CBS News after the news for an update. And the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department says 2 law enforcement officers are being airlifted to a local hospital with unknown injuries. Again, tune in for an update after News 2. LAPD officers have been investigating thousands of clues from the public since the announcement of the reward of $1 million. Authorities raided a hotel in Tijuana, Mexico, hoping to capture Dorner, but he was not found. City officials have added thousands of dollars to the reward in place, bringing that total to $1.4 million. Police have been scrambling to find the former LAPD officer and Navy reservist before he can attack again. He's accused of murdering 3 people, including 1 police officer, and in an online manifesto had declared war on law enforcement. The Carnival Triumph cruise ship, which broke down in the Gulf of Mexico after an engine fire on Sunday, will soon be headed for dock in Alabama on Thursday, February 14th. The 893-foot ship has been drifting north since the incident occurred, and the Coast Guard has sent tugboats to tow it to Mobile, Alabama, instead of Progreso, Mexico, as originally planned. The conditions aboard the ship have been deteriorating since Sunday, with reports of limited access to bathrooms and food. The ship left Galveston, Texas on Thursday, February 7th. The engine fire knocked out the ship's propulsion system. No one was hurt. Passengers are expected to receive refunds. Well, as we continue to celebrate Black History Month, we honor an educator who devoted over 40 years of her life to the education system on St. Croix. Of course, we're talking about the late Evelyn M. Williams. Mrs. Williams was born in 1914 to George and Constancia Benjamin and grew up in Fountain Valley. She always had a passion for education, earning her high school diploma in 1936 and bachelor's and master's degree in education administration at the New York University. Mrs. Williams then went on to serve as a teacher and an administrator at various schools on St. Croix. For over 40 years, she retired in 1972, and in 1974, the Senate passed a bill naming a school in her honor. Mrs. Williams passed away at the age of 98 on February 2nd, 2013. The transition from a rising athlete to fashion model is seemingly beginning to pay off for the Virgin Islands' very own Hannah Davis as she continues to climb her way up to the top of the model world. The 22-year-old who made her debut in this year's Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition made an appearance with other models on the David Letterman show.
Number 6, Hannah Davis.
Will you keep your mouth shut if we lose a couple of girls to shark attacks?
Yeah, see?
Many eyes were glued to the televisions in St. Croix along with The Bachelor and Bachelorettes. They were the center of attention. St. Croix was featured during a 2-hour episode of ABC's The Bachelor. Monday's episode of the romance reality series was filmed entirely on St. Croix and features downtown Christiansted, Point Udall, dining, nightlife, and Seabourn Airlines. The Department of Tourism worked closely with ABC and The Bachelor's team to set up the 11-day shoot that occurred in October. Tourism officials say the impact to the territory was tremendous because of the national exposure and the jobs and revenue it brought to the VI. This season of The Bachelor features Sean Lowe, a 29-year-old entrepreneur from Dallas who is searching for his soulmate from a group of bachelorettes. And due to technical difficulties, some CBS TV2 viewers were unable to view the news and other primetime programs. The station experienced an outage for a couple of hours. However, technicians worked on the matter promptly and was able to rectify the problem. The staff and management of CBS TV2 apologizes for the inconvenience. Well, revelers in New Orleans celebrated Carnival and Mardi Gras with parades, giant floats, and parties. Officials say about 1 million people will spend time in the city's historic French Quarter and will contribute an estimated $300 million to the economy. 8 years after Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, local organizers predicted Carnival 2013 will be one of the best ever. Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday, is the final day of the week's long carnival season. It is devoted to unfettered frivolity and partying in the final hours before Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday starts the Lenten season of sacrifice in the Catholic Church. This year's celebration comes less than 2 weeks after New Orleans hosted Super Bowl, which stuffed local hotels to capacity. And many will be out in the VI celebrating as well. Stick around, your News 2 AccuWeather forecast is coming up next.